Can this current crop of gender warriors overthrow reality? In their effort, they're certainly recruiting as many children soldiers as they can. Welcome to another Tomorrow's World Webcast. My name is Wallace Smith, and I have an article here from KQED. It's a public broadcasting station out of California. The title is this. It asks a lot of questions. It says, boy, girl, both, neither? A new generation overthrows gender. That's from February 15th, 2017. You can kind of guess where the article is going. The article focuses on a child named Max. Max is a 13-year-old boy, but Max has been through quite a journey. Max had wondered if he was a girl and then eventually decided he's neither boy nor girl. And they talk about that. It says, Max at age 13 does not identify as male. Ordinarily, working through the process of elimination, that would be enough to deduce Max's gender. But Max does not identify as female either. Max is, quote, agender, and that's one word, agender, meaning no gender. When referring to Max, you don't use he or she, you use they. They're co-opting what is generally a plural pronoun in description of a singular person, which is Max. They talked to Max, and Max does have a difficult story. When Max was a child in elementary school, Max concluded that really he was more like a girl than a boy, began to identify as a girl, but then even that became confused, which they talk about later in the article. But while doing that, Max was bullied a bit. Max was called names, and Max came to a point where he was thinking about suicide. And that's what I don't want to do. Max says, I felt like nobody loved me. It is a tragedy what things like these people go through in terms of these kinds of circumstances. We're not trying to minimize that. We definitely want to help such people. The question is, how do you help them? Do you help them by embracing fantasy and non-reality, or helping them and leading them, however difficult it is, to come to grips with reality? And that really isn't what's going on. There's a comment later. It says that Max encountered the internet, grew up with the internet, but at the age of 11 or so, started to learn about new terms. It says 2 years ago, after first coming out as someone who identified as a girl, Max learned on Tumblr about terms like non-binary, gender neutral, and agender. And Max says, I was like, you know what? This describes me a little better than girl. I've been rolling with that for over a year. When you actually read the interview with Max here actually in the article, and the words that Max uses everywhere, they're words that have been supplied by the outside world, but they're not words rooted in reality. You have a struggling child, and there's this philosophy out there, there's this movement to erase male and female essentially from our existence, and the language has been built up for that. This child has latched onto, and everyone's quote unquote rolling with it. But you can't ignore reality. This child should be guided. You know, they make a point. They're actually working with Max and talking to Max and looking at his room, noticing posters and all the rest, and they make an interesting observation. The author says, from these surroundings, you wouldn't think the room's occupant is someone who has poked and prodded at the most fundamental sense of who they are. Really? This is just a kid's room. I don't think the author understands the fullness of that statement. That's right. This is a kid's room. This is someone who is not equipped to poke and prod at the most fundamental sense of who he is. That's the job of adults. Proverbs 22 tells us that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. It is the job of the adult world, full of rational adults, moral and loving adults, to lead that child through confusion to some sense of sanity, to some sense of rationality, and to help them come to terms with reality, not to continue ignoring it. There is a bad end coming for some individuals out there that continue to ignore reality. You can't ignore gravity and not experience that. You can't say, you know what, I've decided I don't really believe in gravity. I believe I'm an agravitational being, and so I'm just going to float up into the sky. Eventually, I'm going to come falling back down. These individuals do need help, but is teaching them to ignore reality helping them, or is it setting them up for something so much more difficult? every time that we try to create our own reality that is out of sync with the real reality, it ends in disaster. Societal disaster, to be sure, but also personal disaster. And I do hope that someone decides to help Max divert from what is down the line for him. Thank you very much for watching. Please check out everything we have available at tomorrowsworld.org.